Hello and welcome to another segment of Interviews That Matter. I'm your host Raj Mehta. Friends, in this segment, we bring those guests who influence our lives. This includes elected officials, policymakers, heads of major organizations, and other dignitaries. It is my sincere hope that the knowledge brought in by these guests will help our community. Today we have such guest, Lesko. His career started from a football player to an assistant district attorney to a town supervisor, and now he is the CEO of Accelerate Long Island. Let's meet Mark. Welcome, Mr. Lesko. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks for taking time today. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So before we get into Accelerate Long Island, and that's where you currently are, I wanted to know your background for our viewers' benefit. So I know you graduated from Yale University, and you're a lawyer, you're an attorney basically.
I am.
You were born on February 4th, which is a lucky day,
That's
because my daughter also was born on the same day.
I know.
So
it's a great day. We're both Aquarius.
There you go.
That's right.
So let's go over your background.
Sure.
You're from DC, I guess, right?
I grew up in Washington, D.C. As you mentioned, went to Yale. Played on the football team there. Was a reserve quarterback. And then went to law school at Georgetown. Was in corporate law firms for several years, and then joined the Department of Justice. So I was a federal prosecutor in Washington, D.C., in Brooklyn, and then ultimately out on Long Island, where I ended up being a supervisor in the office. Spent 10 years in the Department of Justice, great job. Spent the latter part of my career focusing on white-collar crimes. Had actually handled a well-publicized trial, the infamous Muttontown slave case. I was the lead prosecutor on that case.
Yes.
So that got a lot of notoriety, human trafficking case. And so after 10 years at the Department of Justice, I was looking for something different. And I talked to some political leaders in Suffolk County, and they urged me to run for the special election for Brookhaven Town Supervisor.
Right.
And so I left a really great career in the Department of Justice to jump into the political fray, and loved it. I had a great time, and never looked back. And so that took me to Brookhaven Town.
So you moved to Long Island when?
Moved to Long Island in 2002. My wife grew up in Southold, so she is a family ties many generations. Her father actually grew up on a potato farm in East Marion, so kind of long-standing North Fork family. And after I met her and married her, fell in love with Long Island and the North Fork and all points in between. So when we had a chance to transfer up here as a federal prosecutor, we jumped at it, and we ended up, because I was working in Brooklyn initially, we ended up moving to the Stony Brook area, east of Talcott. So that's where we live.
It's a long drive.
It was a very long commute. I was very happy to transfer out to Long Island. No doubt about that.
Right. So as a federal prosecutor, you said Muttontown slavery case, which was, I believe it was Indian American there. Is that the Muttontown slavery case?
Yeah. It was two Indonesian domestic servants.
Right, exactly.
An Indian family.
Indian family, right, yeah.
And it was unique. So it wasn't it wasn't typical of any kind of domestic servant relationship. I mean, it was kind of a horrifying story. Lots of physical abuse. A real crime. So, but it got a lot of notoriety because of it was depraved behavior. So, and that happens in big, high-profile criminal cases. But it did shine a bit of a light, along with other initiatives, on domestic servants and human trafficking and that type of thing. So that was a positive outcome.
So your focus was what, like this kind of cases, like a white collar?
Mostly on white collar. I handled a variety. I did gang cases, organized crime, but then, like I said, towards the end of my tenure at the Department of Justice, I handled the latter stages of the Symbol Technologies case, and really supervised and oversaw the kind of portfolio of white collar criminal cases on Long Island. And through that got to understand in a criminal context how companies work and accounting, usually trying to uncover fraud, but corporate accounting principles and that type of thing. So that was an interesting experience.
Mm-hmm. So did you have to deal with any Brooklyn DA at all?
Sure.
Right, Charles Hines?
I dealt with all of the DAs,
All of the DAs.
at some point or
Right.
another. Obviously, when we were out on Long Island, we dealt with the Nassau County and Suffolk County DAs. But oftentimes, I had a gang case out of East New York in Brooklyn, and we dealt closely with the Brooklyn DA's office. They were great to work with. Queens DA, Staten Island DA, Manhattan DA. I mean, we dealt with those folks on a regular basis.
So Brooklyn DA was on our show also, Charles Hines.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
He's a
he
great
came
guy.
on our show. He's a great guy, and he's running for election this year. And
Oh, good for him.
Do have some competition. This
Yeah,
year.
I don't know what number this is for him. He's been around a long time. He's an institution.
23 years.
I know. He's an institution. Really, he runs a very professional, high ethics shop over at the Brooklyn DA's office. They do a wonderful job.
So, if I may ask you that, like when you investigate a case, like, obviously you work for a long time before even case becomes public or really you go to the court, right?
Right.
And what is that process, basically?
Well, I mean, you open up, it all starts with the grand jury investigations. So typically, the thing about handling federal cases, federal prosecutions, is that the prosecutor plays a key role as an investigator, working with agencies like the FBI and the DA and the local police departments and that type of thing. So, you issue subpoenas, you do search warrants, you interview witnesses. The really fun cases involve making taped conversations or doing that type of thing. So it gets really exciting really quickly, I think. That's the part of the case that people don't typically see. So they'll see the trials that are the result of that process.
Right.
But for those of us in law enforcement, it's the cops and robbers thrill of the chase investigative side that really is the fun part. Trials are great too, but building it's kind of analogous to an artist. The process of making the painting is maybe as fulfilling as showing your painting at a gallery, and so I love that process.
So how is it get initiated? Like, how do you get the tip from somebody, or
depends. I mean, like in the violent crime case,
Right.
you oftentimes start with an unsolved murder or something like that, or a gang that's being is very active. Organized crime, sometimes you get source information, you get informants that give you information. In the white collar context, you see some irregularity with the company, their stock price plummets, or a whistleblower alleges that there's fraud taking place. So you get your information from a variety of sources.
And then you proceed further.
And you proceed further. You got to exercise judgment. You have to
Right.
make that decision. I mean, the great prosecutors like Charles Hines and others, the reason they're so great is because they execute judgment at the start to figure out what cases merit going forward and which ones should really not be prosecuted.
So which one goes to the federal and which one goes to the state?
A lot of it just depends on the statutes.
Okay.
For the vast majority of murders, for instance, they would go to the state prosecutors.
Okay.
Now, if they're part of a kind of a racketeering enterprise, like a organized crime family or a international gang, then the federal statutes can be better, because you can prosecute under the RICO statute and establish a racketeering enterprise. That lets you bring into the prosecution older crimes. So if you think of the old La Cosa Nostra cases, they're prosecuting murders that might have happened in the 70s, 80s, 90s. But if it's all part of an ongoing enterprise, then that evidence can come in. So that's why that statute's pretty good, and it's a federal statute. Some types of cases are exclusively federal. Think of federal income tax evasion, for instance. So the states typically, the states can't prosecute those offenses. So if there's a big, federal tax charge, that case will typically go to the federal prosecutors.
So recently, there was another case of 7-Eleven, right? 7-Eleven,
Sure.
similar to what you prosecuted in
Yeah, we
Mutton
were involved in similar cases in the past. So that's an outgrowth of human trafficking. So you have a labor force that is typically brought over where they have some type of debt that they incur, where they have to pay it back in hours worked or part of a paycheck, and they typically live on site or in some rooming house. And it's that type of scenario is not uncommon. And for the 7-Elevens, today it's a 7-Eleven, tomorrow it might be something else, gas stations or something like that. I think those type of prosecutions are very effective in the sense that they provide a deterrent for that type of behavior, because it's easy to let those crimes go unpunished, because when you actually deal with the employees, they're making money, they're sending money home, they're in America, so they're not necessarily unhappy compared to their prior circumstances, but they're still victims. So but those cases are very complicated, take a long time to put together. You have immigration issues, you have tax issues, you have labor law issues, and they take a lot of skill to put those type of cases together. I give the U.S. Attorney Loretta Lynch and her team a lot of credit for putting that type of case together.
So now from an assistant attorney prosecutor to Brookhaven town supervisor, obviously that's a big change right there.
Big change. Exciting change.
Exciting change, right? So who was your mentor? Who first told you that, Mark, this is something you should do?
Yeah, so my absolute best mentor, and still is to this day, is a fellow named Rich Schaefer.
He was here in the show.
He was here? Great. Rich is he's
party leader.
He's the party leader. He's a supervisor of Babylon now.
Right.
And just Rich is just a super guy. Great with advice, leadership. I mean, he's an amazing leader himself. And so he was the one I initially talked to, and he partly convinced me that this was something to explore in terms of running for office. And then when I was in office, I would talk to him almost every day. So he's a great public servant, great asset for Long Island, and he was my mentor.
Plus, I want to tell you one thing, that I know Rich for a long time, and he's a nice man.
Good man.
He's a good man on top of good politician, but he's a good man also.
Yeah. He very extremely ethical guy, and there are among the electeds, I have to tell you, we're blessed on Long Island because we do have electeds that are by and large true public servants. So I fell under the wing of folks like Paul Pontieri and Pat Jog, Tim Bishop, Congressman Tim Bishop. On the Republican side, Senator Ken LaValle, Senator John Flanagan are good friends. Jimmy Morgo, who years ago used to be an elected official and worked for the Suffolk County, was a great mentor. A lot of great people out here that care deeply about this region from a public perspective, and they all were great resources for me.
So Brookhaven town was kind of, traditionally it was a Republican town.
Right.
And then I guess you broke that.
I was part of it. So the local party chair was a woman named Marcia Laufer. And about 10 years ago, she started an effort that led to, at one point, I think 3 of the 4 townwide elected positions were Democrats. The board was split, Democrat, Republican, with a conservative, Jane Bonner, who's a good friend in the middle there. And our congressman, I think the majority of assembly people, state senators were split. So it was an interesting time, because you're right, it was traditionally known as a Republican town.
Right.
And when I was there, at least, it was kind of a mixed bag. So it made for some interesting politics, I'll tell you that, because when you have that mix, you have becomes very contentious, and that's fun. That's good.
Yep, you put together a team of both parties, actually.
Well, I tried. So I kind of hopefully I thought brought a little bit of a different mentality. So in law enforcement, no one cares if you're a Republican or Democrat. In fact, the FBI agents I work with, I never knew what party persuasion. I didn't even know if they were registered with a party. So I didn't really care at some level. If you can do the job, I'm working with you. So we kind of brought that mentality to Brookhaven, and we put together a bipartisan team. So my deputy supervisor was a Republican.
Right.
My chief of operations was a conservative. My chief of staff was a Democrat. We were kind of like the United Nations for political parties, and it worked. And we delivered, I thought, excellent services to the residents. We had, were able to accomplish quite a bit, particularly as it relates to economic development. So I'm very proud of what we did, and we did it together. We all worked together. We had our moments. It's like a family. I mean, you fight and then you kiss and make up. It's very similar dynamic. But I wouldn't trade that time for anything. It was a great time.
Very good, very good. So what was your most accomplishment in there? Like, economic development was one.
Yeah, so we really focused. I mean, I very early on came to the realization that there were really two, and this is from '09 through 2012, two issues that the voters cared deeply about. All three, really. They care about their quality of life, obviously.
Right.
But taxes.
Right.
And we, actually during my time, we reduced taxes over the course of the four budgets. We actually reduced taxes, yes, slightly.
Did I hear it right?
We did. And and that came as a result of freezing the tax rates. And so we're proud about that. So I felt like we brought tax relief to the voters. And then, of course, the state imposed the tax cap, and that was a wonderful move by Governor Cuomo and Senator Skelos and others. And then the most, in my view, the most important issue that we focused on was economic development, jobs.
Right.
Jobs, both because we need to kind of we needed a boost locally in terms of economic activity, but long term, when you look at the next generation of Long Islanders, you ask yourself, where are these kids going to work? Like your daughter. I mean, these kids are incredibly well educated, highly motivated. A lot of them are interested in technology and working for companies like Google and Facebook and so forth. And the cruel irony was that we were educating these wonderful kids to go move to
out, right.
New York City or beyond, sometimes California.
Yep.
And it just seemed to me to be a tremendous waste of energy on Long Island, where we're losing these talented young people. So I really think it's the key to our economic future is to grow the economy, particularly the technology-based economy on Long Island. So we put together a couple of initiatives when I was there that I'm particularly proud of. Blight to Light was an initiative where we focused on redeveloping blighted properties. At the town level, a lot of what you do involves real estate. So the notion was, let's stop talking about, tearing forests down and building, housing on farmland, and let's go to the blighted areas of Long Island, and there are many of them, unfortunately. The empty car dealerships and that type of thing, and start focusing on developing those sites. And then, of course, we started. We're instrumental, I should say, in beginning the discussion about Accelerate Long Island, and that was really an initiative that I focused on hard, and I thought I got very excited by the potential of that initiative, and as a result, ended up leaving politics, and now I'm running it.
We'll talk about that after the break. We'll take a short break, and we'll be right back. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Interviews That Matter. I'm your host Raj Mehta. We're having a wonderful conversation with Mark Lesko, who is the CEO of Accelerate Long Island. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you very much.
So now let's talk about the Accelerate Long Island. You started the initiative when you were the supervisor, and now then you kind of left that becoming a supervisor, and then you went into totally different field. So from football player to attorney to supervisor to now CEO.
Exactly.
What is the mission of Accelerate Long Island?
Well, the mission is it's an economic development focused nonprofit organization, and the mission ultimately is to grow technology jobs. The short-term mission is to identify and work with the really exciting group of technology-based startup companies on Long Island.
Okay.
Many of them are commercializing research out of our world-class research institutions. And the other kind of dual goal is to grow what many commonly refer to as the entrepreneurial ecosystem on Long Island. If you look at areas where they've successfully kind of fostered and grown startup companies that have become companies like Google and those type of companies, they emerge out of a robust, vibrant ecosystem. A lot of times those ecosystems are centered around cities or universities or both. Classic example is Silicon Valley and its relationship to Stanford University. And we have those assets here on Long Island. I mean, we have Brookhaven National Lab, Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, Hofstra, Stony Brook, North Shore LIJ Health System, and those are the founding institutions for Accelerate Long Island. And their view was, let's band together and let's focus regionally on this startup ecosystem. And we all benefit because the region benefits by virtue of company creation and job creation. The institutions benefit because they could end up making money off of some of these companies, and it's also a place for their researchers to focus their research. It's a fascinating process, taking research from the bench into a company, out into a product, and taking that product out to market. And when you talk to the research community, that's very appealing to them, not only because they can make money off of it, but because it actually takes their research and practically applies it to human beings.
Right.
And that's ultimately, for a lot of these researchers, why they love science. And so that's very fulfilling, that part of the job.
So you go to Brookhaven National Lab and Cold Spring Harbor. I mean, I know they've got too many scientists and they do research all the time. And we had Dr. Walter Copen here, and he explained the whole process, how to take a initial, like somebody thinks it's a research or somebody thinks it's a product, and how it can be translated into a commercialization of that, right? So after that becomes like, for example, Brookhaven decides that, okay, this is the product now, it can be marketed, then they come to you.
Right, and so we're part we help companies at all stages, but probably where we add the most value is when you have a research idea, intellectual property we call it, and you build a strategy around that idea to create a pathway towards commercialization. And it's a complex process, and it's fraught with peril. These are high risk endeavors. You know that. You built an amazing business on Long Island, and it was a startup at some point.
So started from my bedroom.
Exactly. So you've been there and you've done that, and emotionally, it's a process. Financially, it's a process. So it's a roller coaster. So, but that's really exciting. So you're actually it's a creative process at the end of the day. And so you have to take the idea. There's a lot of great ideas, but you have to really, at the outset, figure out what idea can be used to create a product that people will buy. Right. Whether it's a service, whether it's actual product, that you can shrink wrap or. And that process is kind of new to the research community. They're used to solving big problems, but a lot of those solutions may not have a commercial application. So initially, that's what can we make a company around this idea? Can we sell something? Will a customer be willing to buy something that evolves out of this idea? Fine. So let's say the answer is yes. Then you have to build the right management team around the idea. You have to get it funded. You have to protect the intellectual property. Oftentimes that means filing patent applications. Sometimes that can be costly, particularly if you seek international protection of your patents. You have to license the technology, because when the technology is developed at the laboratories, and this is almost always the case, the laboratories or the universities own the intellectual property. That has to be out-licensed to the company. So it's kind of like being a conductor of an orchestra, and you know that because you run a big company. Every day there's an array of issues that need to be addressed, And then there's the stuff that you don't plan for. You know, sometimes that's good, like a market opportunity that where you need the big word now is pivot, and chase that opportunity. Sometimes it's bad, some type of maybe there's a glitch in the funding, or the patent application is taking too long to process, or maybe you have competing intellectual property that you learn about. So you got to be ready for the unforeseen difficulties, but you also have to stay on your plan. So it's complex, it's chaotic. I love it because it reminds me of my days in Brookhaven, where every day was a new day, and you kind of thought you knew what you would be doing during the day, and all of a sudden a hurricane hits or a forest fire erupts and everything goes out the window. So it's not that dramatic on most days, but it's fun, it's invigorating, it's exciting.
So one track is labs like Brookhaven National Lab or Cold Spring Harbor, they have a scientist, they do research, and they come out with something. Another track is, let's say, for example, people who are in the houses, they may have a lot of ideas also.
Right.
People who are viewers here, right, of the show, they may have some ideas, right?
Exactly.
So how do they, sometimes, I've learned myself that, people have great ideas, but if they are in the pocket, it doesn't do any good.
Right.
It has to come out.
Right.
Right. So, okay, coming out, how do they approach Accelerate Long Island? How can you help them from taking that idea? Because many people don't know actually what to do. What is next?
Yep. So that's where we're particularly helpful. So we're a point of entry to the Long Island ecosystem, and the ecosystem is robust. There's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit and activity on Long Island. And we're not alone. I mean, there are other organizations that we have very close relationships, like the Long Island Forum for Technology or ListNet. There are many players, many good programs at Stony Brook University, Hofstra, Delphi, the Launchpad, Mineola. There's a whole number of organizations and institutions that are players, and then individuals.
Right.
But you need that point of entry. So you need to be able to know you can enter into this ecosystem. If you've got a great idea, people can give you advice and kind of steer you along that road. So what we offer is an ability to potentially get funding. We have 2 seed funds that we run. One is a private fund that we co-invest with, and we, Accelerate Long Island, we have our own seed fund. And we also have other funding sources that we partner with. We have and that program's called Accelerate Funding. We have the Accelerate Assist program, which is basically a mentorship program. So we have a team of mentors or other organizations that can provide mentoring to startup companies. That is hugely valuable. So like you said, if somebody's developing an idea in their house or their garage, point of entry, make contact with Accelerate, and we can refer you to the right program, the right organization, or the right mentor that can really walk you through the process. And the last is program is something we call Accelerate Ecosystem. And these are our events that we hold that are focused exclusively on entrepreneurs, so that they can get a sense of community. They can ask their peers questions, their mentors questions. And I mean, when you see these events, and you've been to many of them, it is a nonstop series of questions, an unquenchable thirst for information. That's really one of the defining characteristics of a potentially successful entrepreneur. How to get in touch with us? We have a website, acceleratelI.org. That's acceleratelI.org. Reach out to us by email, and we meet with companies on a daily basis. But you have to kind of take ownership of your own destiny when it comes to creating a company. And there are a lot of people willing to help. So if you make that point, enter into the ecosystem through Accelerate or ListNet or any of the organizations, there are a lot of people out there that will be willing to help you.
So because of there are a lot of different organizations doing similar thing, the Accelerate Long Island kind of, it's in the middle somewhere.
Exactly.
It goes here and goes here, that kind of thing. That's how it works.
Exactly. So we view ourselves as kind of an honest broker, and not that people are dishonest, but a neutral broker.
Right.
Regionally focused, and we focus not only, there's some organizations that focus on IT, some on manufacturing, some on biotech. We focus on many different sectors.
Okay.
So right now we're particularly focused on information technology, which is near and dear to your heart.
Right.
Life sciences, biotechnology is the second one. The third one is energy. And actually, as we speak, we're kind of in the middle of forming a strategy around a fourth sector, and that's agri-bio, food tech, that type of thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how Long Island Association is in the mix here?
Sure. So our board, I mentioned the big 5 research institutions.
Right.
Brookhaven Labs, Stony Brook, Cold Spring Harbor, Hofstra, North Shore LIJ. We were formed under the auspices of the Long Island Association. Kevin Law is the chairman of our board.
Right.
Great leader, and he's involved with us on a daily basis. That's where our offices are. And it's a really great relationship with the LIA. Other members of our board, Dave Colon from Jove Equities, Mark Fasciano from Canrock Ventures.
Right.
We have the Roush Foundation, Ernst & Young, Fail Fritz Law Firm, CA Technologies is on our board, and I think I'm probably leaving somebody out, but I think that's basically it. And it's a great team, and kind of a cross section, and we all have a common purpose, and that's to grow this ecosystem and to create companies.
Good. Well, if it comes from the heart, it can work.
That's one of the defining premises of the organization. Commitment,
right.
and it's got to come from the heart. And ultimately, we were formed to benefit the region. So it's a nonprofit, and the idea was to have this kind of innovation broker that would think regionally.
Right.
Would get access, unfettered access, to the intellectual property, to the research at the laboratories, but also unfettered access to industry, to the organizations that exist. And I view us as a good partner for everybody. Everybody's a leader in their own right, so we're not putting ourselves out there as a leader, but we're a good place to start if you want to introduce yourself to the ecosystem.
I know Kevin Law is a very great leader. I mean, he was on the show also.
Was he really? Yeah. Kevin's a good friend.
Kevin is a good, very smart, very bright man.
Visionary guy.
Very visionary guy.
And so Kevin is not only a chairman of our board, but we have an investment committee for our seed fund, and he really leads that effort as well. So he wears a lot of different hats at Accelerate Long Island.
So are you getting any help from the state government? Or?
We are. So the fund that we administer came from the state. Okay. So thankfully, Governor Cuomo and the Empire State Development Corporation saw fit to award us a $500,000 grant during the first round of regional council grants.
Right.
And so that it's really a grant fund. So we match our grants with the private seed fund, the Long Island Emerging Technologies Fund, that was newly created. And those investors, Fasciano, Cologne, and a fellow named Neil Cohen, working with actually Chuck Schumer, Senator Schumer was one of the kind of proponents of creating that fund. And so we all work together. Right now, we have heard pitches from about 25 technology-based startup companies.
Okay.
We're doing due diligence on about a half dozen or so right now. I think we'll be in a position in about a month to announce the first round of funding, the first round of companies. So that's really super exciting.
It is.
And so once that gets out there, I think people will kind of understand the type of companies that we're looking to invest in, and we're really super excited about that announcement.
Mark, can you do just one thing? Before, when you fund these companies, can you write a contract that you have to be here for 10 years?
Well, actually, that's part of the grant. So the grant requires that the companies stay in New York.
Stay here in Long Island?
And we require that the companies be located on Long Island.
Stay here.
And well, if there's clawback provisions, so if the company does leave New York, they have to address the grant issue and ultimately pay it back. So we're protecting the interests of the state of New York. Believe me. But you're right. I mean, that's
a key
that's
thing.
always
that's
an issue
key for us. Really. I mean.
Yeah. That's a big issue, and it's something we think a lot about because if, knock on wood, some of these companies become hugely successful, other areas of the country are going to want to poach them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like OSI left, a lot of people,
Exactly.
Grumman.
Exactly. So I mean, so my view ultimately is that's the price of success.
Right.
If other regions want your companies, that means you must have good companies, right?
Right.
So I think that falls in the category of a problem, but a good problem. But we're not there yet. So let's build these companies. Let's let them grow.
Right.
Hopefully provide them with the capital to keep them moving forward. And hope that and work towards having some of them become hugely successful.
And how about the state controller's office? Are they funding you at all, or are they helping?
Ultimately, they are indirectly a funding resource. So there's something called the in-state program that's part of their private equity wing, and they invest in early stage venture capital companies.
Exactly.
And some companies on Long Island, startup companies, have received investments from those. I think there's about 20 of them that are part of the in-state program.
Okay.
I think, it all depends, Raj, on deal flow. So if you have, that's why we're really excited, because if you have quality deal flow, quality companies, then you can get out there and market them to the venture capitalists. So we've been at this about 9 months. We're working with over 100 really good companies.
Wow.
And now, finally, we're spending a lot of our time in New York City talking to those venture capital firms, promoting these companies, urging them to take a look at them, and they're pretty excited. They're very receptive.
Good.
So that's a huge role for Accelerate Long Island, is interacting with the New York City funders as well as the Long Island-based funders and getting these companies funded. That's what has to happen.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your work, hard work, and time today. And that's all time we have today. Thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions, comments, you can email me at rajmitv@gmail.com. That's again rajmitv@gmail.com. If you would like to watch our prior show, you can go on youtube.com/Infosys International. Again, that's youtube.com/Infosys International. Until next time, have a great week. Thank you.